Hello. It's Ping from the Chinese Community Center. I certainly feel that there's a lot of facility for the youth club, especially for those aged between 14 to 19. We have a youth club running in London Chinatown Soho, and quite often we found very difficult to take the youth out to like sports centres. So sometimes we just go to St James Park to play football. Not all the kids want to play football, especially the girls. So we approach Jubilee Centre, but they charge very expensive. So quite often you can see a lot of youth hanging out in Trocadero, playing gambling, slot machine. So, but however, in nearby there was I know there was a fire station. They have some sport facilities, and for police, I just say whether or not we can share, they can opening up or share the facility for local residents and youth members.
Thank you very much.
I think skateboarding had been very popular when there was one, what is now the Academy on Harrow Road. I don't think that facility was ever replaced. And one of the problems that they had in the days when there was a skateboarding there was that their bicycle racks, were no bicycle racks in those days, for which the children who bicycled to it could safely secure their bicycles. I understand, I've seen in the Royal Parks they do quite a lot for the older skateboarding, but again, they would need to be funded for the supervision of skateboarding. And they give them lessons which perhaps they can pay some contribution to. But it's actually just outside Westminster. The skateboarding takes place on the Broad Walk or the Flower Walk between the Gates and Albert. So I think they're not in Westminster. But we did have one on the canal, which was not near people because it's a very noisy outdoor occupation. And there is one in West Way, right on the west side of Kensington Chelsea in the north, where there's another skateboarding park, which is very popular. But it's underneath a road. We have got a very pretty floral site underneath the Harrow Road, which we could sacrifice for the amount of noise that the skateboarders would be not noticed in that roundabout. But it is very important to notice what the neighbours think about the noise from teenagers, which can be terrific.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say I think from a developer perspective, certainly the research is particularly important in terms of suitable locations. A lot of schemes that we do within the city for residential schemes are conversions of existing office buildings, which aren't necessarily suitable for children's play space, as opposed to the larger redevelopment schemes where it may be possible to achieve that on site.
What about other social and community facilities? The principle of providing, because this isn't just about children's facilities, but obviously the whole spectrum of social and community facilities.
I think there's a critical mass point in respect of the individual schemes themselves. I also think, and it just comes on to a later point in one of the other questions about opportunities for the larger developers, perhaps to provide even in the opportunity areas, for example, on redevelopment schemes for above and beyond what would normally be required, i.e. larger provision of community facilities, albeit that maybe they could be offset against other priorities, or indeed potentially community credit in respect of those facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting what you've just said about it's not just been limited to children. We've raised the possibility of the need for funding for ongoing maintenance. I would like to raise the question of outreach. There are always going to be people who simply don't want to go to clubs and do things, whether they're children, young people or adults. There are also people in various kinds of needs. Our ward council's budget, part of it's been used for a project to outreach work with drug abuse, people, drug abusers and families. And it seems to me that if we can actually think about things that are not location-based, I mean, they're not building-based or space-based, as it were, but the idea of funding facility, sort of mobile facilities, as it were, could come into play. It could be very helpful indeed for people who are marginal, for people who... You don't necessarily want more things on the ground. You might, but you might not. And there might be very worthwhile things that could be done in terms of social and community provision that require funding to go to a worker who's expert.
I expect job brokerage falls into the same, job brokerage schemes fall in the same thing, and that they provide that service and they don't, it's not the premises, it's about the ongoing provision of somebody to broker jobs in the local area and those things.
And bicycles. I
Can,
won't raise bicycles then, but the children have to get to the centres.
Absolutely.
And I'm not talking about the planned ones that we're going to have.
So do the adults
But
sometimes
just to
on their
add to that,
bikes as
if
well.
we're talking about bicycles, we then do really get on to how to get about on a bicycle safely.
can I raise the point of parallel policies? Because Active Westminster is obviously a strategy policy which we have in terms of engaging with all sorts of participation within the city, and I take the point that was made by the Early Years and Children's Unit in terms of facilities, but I think one of the main things that Westminster is missing is facilities for clubs, sports clubs, activities that are not necessarily mainstream youth clubs or other facilities, but organised places where volunteer parents and others can join together to give support for youngsters in the areas that they need that support. Active Westminster obviously tries to address and identify the needs through the services that they require, but the planning process needs to engage with facilitating some of that opportunity in the future. And just to pick up on a few of the points that were made, in terms of a climbing centre, we've got a 3-storey climbing centre being built at the moment in Seymour Leisure Centre, which will open later in the year. We've got fabulous skateboard facilities at the Westminster Academy under the Harrow Road. There's lots of things happening around the city that can engage young people, but it is about communication and information and about making those things known. But coming back to the planning policy, there are those links that need to be in place to make and facilitate the delivery of the services, which we have many in the city, but there are gaps